Welcome to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
We're back with episode 68, and my guest this week is Princeton University men's heavyweight rowing coach, Greg Hughes. Greg and I caught up back in December at the Joyous Sculling Conference, and he gave a phenomenal presentation when he paired up with rowing biomechanics expert Connie Draper. The presentation discussed 3 different types of technology and how they are integrated within the training system at Princeton University men's heavyweight rowing program. So the 3 pieces of technology that we'll be talking about are heart rate and heart rate variability, GPS, and force curves. Greg will explain each system and how it integrates into the training at Princeton University men's heavyweight rowing. And he also describes the benefits and things that he and the coaching staff and athletes learn from using these technologies. Let me tell you a little bit more about Greg Hughes. Greg Hughes begins his 8th season with the Tiger Heavyweights in 2017 and has guided Princeton to a 16-2 record over the last 2 seasons, as well as medals at both Sprints and IRAs. Last year, Princeton went 8-1 and won medals in its top 4 boats at postseason regattas. The varsity boat took silver at Sprints and bronze at IRAs, its best postseason performance in a decade. Since 2013, Princeton has made every grand final at Sprints and IRAs, and it hasn't finished below 4th in either. As the heavyweight coach, Hughes has led Princeton to a 48-14 record, including a 29-13 mark in the Ivy League. He has also helped several of his individual rowers to international success, including 2016 captain Martin Barakso, who was a member of the Canadian team at the 2015 Senior World Championships. Many of his rowers have competed at the U23 Worlds annually, including 8 current or incoming rowers at the 2016 World Championships. Hughes, a former Ivy League and national champion rower with the Princeton men's lightweights, took over as head coach of the men's lightweight crew in 2006, following the retirement of his former coach, Joe Murtaugh. In his first year, Hughes turned a team that had gone 2-7 in consecutive seasons into a program that went 5-3 and earned a bronze medal at nationals. In each of the next 3 seasons, Princeton's winning percentage would improve, and the Orange and Black would win at least 1 medal at either the Eastern Sprints or IRA championships. In 2008, the Tigers rose to number 1 in the national rankings, won its first Goldthwait Cup over Harvard and Yale since 1999, and placed 2nd at the Eastern Championships. In 1999, Hughes co-coached the U.S. lightweights men's pair and the heavyweight pair with Coxon at the World Championships, with the latter winning gold. He co-coached the U.S. men's 8 and the men's pair at the Under-23 World Championships in 2000, where the 8 won a bronze medal. The next year, Hughes assisted Murtaugh in coaching the U.S. lightweight 8 that won bronze at the World Championships. In 2002, Hughes coached the Under-23 men's 8 to a gold and the pair to a bronze at the World Championships. He also led the U.S. 4 with Coxon to a bronze medal at the 2004 World Championships. In 2005, Hughes coached the U.S. men's straight 4, which finished 4th at the Under-23 Worlds, and he coached the U.S. men's 4 with to gold at the 2007 World Championships. Hughes was a 4-year lightweight rower under Murtaugh. A 1996 Princeton graduate, Hughes was undefeated in all of his 4 regular seasons and won 2 Eastern Sprints titles. He was an All-Ivy League rower on the 1994-1996 National Championship lightweight crews. He served as team captain in 1996 and won the Gordon G. Sykes Award for the greatest contribution to Princeton lightweight crew. He would go on to be an alternate for both the 1997 and 1998 lightweight U.S. national teams. Now, without further ado, let's roll to episode 68 with Greg Hughes. I'd like to welcome Princeton University men's heavyweight rowing coach Greg Hughes to the Leo Training Podcast. Greg, thanks so much for coming on to the show, taking time out of your busy coaching schedule and being a husband and father as well to make some time to come on to the show and share your experience and expertise with the rowing community.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to get the chance to chat.
Yes, likewise. I'm looking forward to this. It was great to catch up with you in person several months back at the 2016 Joy Sculling Conference, and we've got some fantastic topics in store for the audience. But before we launch into that, I always like to give my guest a couple of minutes to take a time to introduce themselves. So why don't you let the audience know, a little bit about your athletic background as an athlete, and then also your transition and roots as a coach.
Yeah, sure. So I learned how to row at my high school. I grew up out west on a small island out in the Puget Sound, and ended up going to high school up on Vancouver Island, where I at a school called Brentwood College, and it had a really strong rowing tradition up there, and that's where I learned to row, and also where I got my first introduction to incredible coaching. I had some amazing coaches up there, John Queen and Tony Carr, great coaches, great mentors. And I went from there to Princeton and was a lightweight at Princeton, graduated in the class of 96, and was the captain of the squad my senior year. After I graduated, I knew I wanted to coach, and I also thought I wanted to be a teacher. And so I initially started down that path, but coaching really took over pretty quickly. And I was the intern coach for a year here at Princeton in 97, became the freshman heavyweight coach, and did that for 8 years here at Princeton. And then Joe Murtaugh retired, who had been my lightweight coach here at Princeton. And I became the head lightweight coach, was the head lightweight coach here from 06 to 09. And then Curtis Jordan retired. And so I became the head heavyweight coach, and I've been doing that since. Excellent.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's it's been a remarkable journey.
Yeah.
And did you ever see yourself, like, after having, been a student athlete at Princeton, is that it just kind of naturally, organically happened where you saw yourself staying in Princeton, New Jersey?
Honestly, absolutely not. I had initially, my initial plan was to return back out west, and in fact I had. So for a very brief time, I had moved back out and was going to be back up in British Columbia, coaching and teaching up there at my former high school. The problem was I couldn't get a visa. I'm a U.S. citizen, and it didn't work out. And so I was sort of left without an option, and I didn't really know what to do. And Princeton sort of saved me. I mean, Joe Murtaugh had a unpaid spot, and I basically packed the car back up, drove out. And I'd always known I was interested in the college, the college gig, but I just thought it would take a lot more time. So I jumped in, and then just like, there's a lot to be said for being in the right place at the right time. and just by virtue of being around, I think a lot of it's been luck. So it's been good.
Well, I'm sure there's been a lot of hard work involved in there too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's launch into our first topic. So, like I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to attend a presentation you did at the 2016 Joy Sculling Conference in Saratoga Springs, New York. And it was kind of centered around, I guess, the main kind of theme for the presentation was technology being used in the collegiate environment. And it was the dual presentation with yourself and forgive me, what's Connie's last name?
Connie Draper. Yeah.
Connie Draper's led the presentation with you as well. And the three pieces of technology that you touched upon was heart rate variability system, measuring the force curves in the rowing shell, and then the catapult / GPS kind of system.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it back over to you. What what are those three pieces of technology? What kind of data are you pulling from them? And then, what's the value in measuring those?
Yeah, well, so just briefly to touch on the systems, the heart rate monitoring system we use is a system called First Beat, and it monitors and records heart rate and heart rate variability, and it also shows it in real time. So one of the things that we do, like all of our athletes are wearing a band, we're collecting that data, but at the same time we keep a laptop open and it's running, and all of those bands are sending over a radio signal in real time with the data coming off the band. So we can watch how everybody's responding to the work that we're doing, to the recovery that we build into our workouts, to pay a little bit closer attention to how we set the workout as it happens and how people are responding to it. That also, at the end of each session, as soon as we end the session and shut the software off, it generates a report for each athlete, and they receive that in their email. So by the time they walk up to the locker room, they've got a full one-page report sitting in there that has their heart rate breakdown and their expenditure for the workout. So they have a sense of their caloric burn, how much time they spent in each training zone, and some simple guidelines for thinking about recovery based on the level of intensity. The athletes love it because I think it gives them a little bit of a objective feedback on the workout. Like, okay, good workout based on, wins or losses on the day. Sure. But it also allows them to understand how they benefited from the workout. And also we'll repeat workouts. And so they can see how they responded to the same workout today versus 2-3 weeks ago. And they're getting good enough with it now that they can actually see some of that stuff. And it's a real good conversation starter where they will come and talk about how they approach the workout in a different way, and they saw how it affected them. And I think it gives them a little bit more ownership of the way that they train, which I really, really like. The second system that we use is the Peach system. There's a fair number of programs that have started using it. I think a lot more overseas, but it's effectively a biomech system. So what it's measuring is force and length on the rowing stroke. It's also measuring that for each person and compiling it together for the entire boat. So you can look at how a person is applying their force, how much force they're applying. You can look at the slip at the catch. You can look at the slip at the finish. You can see when they're reaching peak force, and you can see how they're moving on the recovery as well. And so we can look at that individually and talk with them about some technical strengths and some opportunities for some improvement. We can also then look at how they're piecing together as a boat to look at how we can match them up a little bit better, or maybe adjust them in the boat to get them into a seat where they can be more effective. And it's a really awesome tool. We don't use it all the time. I would say that it's on the boat. If it's on the boat 3 or 4 days a month, I would say that would be standard. We'll typically use it. We'll collect some data and maybe make a couple of tweaks with people, or think about something, check it again, take it off, and just row. It's not something we would live with every day. And then the third system that we use is called the Catapult Minimax, and it's basically, the way to think of it is it's a super high powered GPS. The average GPS that you'd wear on your watch, or like an NK unit in your boat, would be pulling data once every 3 seconds. So when you're looking at that split popping up on your NK unit, that's sort of what you're seeing. Is it's giving you that 3-second interval. These units are collecting data 100 times a second. And so you're actually able to see the way that the boat accelerates and decelerates. You can also measure with the accelerometers in there, the pitch, roll, yaw of the boat. So you understand how the boat runs and checks, how it might bounce or steer straight or not steer straight. So it's a really useful tool for fine tuning some of the boat movement.
That's incredibly interesting. So with the second and third system, Catapult and Peach, by getting a visual representation of the force curve as well as kind of the peak kind of acceleration times during the catch and the drive phases, is that something that when you're looking at that you can watch that data, and then has it changed or altered the way that you kind of communicate or coach because you have this kind of this new information?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that it hasn't changed the way I communicate. I think it's added to the ways I can communicate. And what I've found and what really sort of led me to start experimenting with some of this stuff was I was looking for new ways to try to understand rowing for myself, and be able to help communicate some of the things that we might be learning about how a guy is rowing or a boat is rowing. And everybody learns differently. Me too. And I think when you see some of this stuff, like the initial reaction, I mean, and I see it in those conferences, I'll throw up a data sheet from the Peach, and I'm so used to sort of looking at some of this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff up there, a lot of colors and a lot of lines, and it could be overwhelming. And so the goal is not to create that environment for the athlete. And so like with the athletes, this isn't something where every day they're receiving a ton of information on this. Really, the goal is trying to find little pieces of information that would really connect well with a particular style of learning. And every kid learns differently. We've got a lot of bright kids here, but some people, the actual verbal communication, that's really what they need. Some of the other kids, like, they're visual learners. And so when we use some of this stuff and we can put it into templates where we'll see it with sort of like a color scheme attached to it, the way the boat accelerates and decelerates, we can color band it. And so it shows up with blues and greens and yellows. And for me, that's actually, for me, one of the most useful things. I can really understand that just quickly. I can see it. Right. Some people, it's the curve. They just, and curves don't work for me. Like, I'm not a math guy. So when I look at those, a lot of times, like, yeah, okay, it's some lines on a page. But it's crazy. A lot of the engineers on the team, that really registers for them. Right. And it helps them kind of visualize how they're taking their stroke and how they want to try to change it. And so I think that's been the big part here. I think the other piece for us is it allows us to triangulate the way that we think about our improvement a little bit. So, and I think about it on the erg, like, if you do a workout, whatever it is, let's say you do a 5 by 1500 meter workout, mm-hmm. and then you come back and you repeat that 5 by 1500 meter workout with the same cadences on each piece, and you average a split faster on the day, you can say, I'm fitter, but are you? Right? I think that's sort of the question. And I think that, okay, if you've been training hard and you improve, then yeah, I think the general answer is yes. But that's where the first beat system comes into play for us. We're able to actually look at physiologically how they respond to that. Mm-hmm. And so we have a way of measuring their output with a training effect score. And so we can take a look at their average heart rate and their max heart rate. So we know they did go a split faster. And, oh, hey, by the way, their training effect score was slightly lower, meaning it cost them a little bit less to generate that effort. So they're adapting to the program. And so that gives them confidence to know, hey, look, 'cause in rowing, we're always training hard, right? Mm-hmm. And that beats you up. And I think a lot of times, like, guys, they get to that point where, like, am I overtraining? Am I doing too much? And it's a good way for us to say, look, you're doing great. Like, you're not overtraining, and we can keep pushing it. You're okay. We aren't to the breaking point yet. And so I think those are some of the ways that we'll see it. We're messing around now with trying to figure out a way to combine the heart rate data with the peach data, the heart rate data with the minimax data, so that we can actually look at where are the breaking points for individuals where we know their stroke starts to break down a little bit. And is there a physiological spot in there that we want to think about so that we can maybe spend a little bit more time with that particular athlete there? When you have a big, huge training environment, it's very easy to just make everybody do exactly the same thing. And not everybody's going to respond the same to the same workout or get the same benefit. And so what we've been doing, and especially in the wintertime now, is slightly tweaking the way that we have each athlete do each of those workouts, even though we might be doing the same workout, so that we're keeping them in slightly different zones for different amounts of time. Our feeling being that for that athlete, that's where we want to have them spend more time. Right. Sometimes it's because it's more beneficial. They're just good there, and we want to build that for them. Sometimes it's we want them to be in a place where they are uncomfortable and get used to that and improve their weakness, as opposed to just, okay, I'm really great in the I can always close really well, so I'm always going to set up my piece so I can have an amazing last 750. Well, okay, but what about the first 750? So we can go and spend some time there, right? And I think these systems have allowed us to spend time with that and show them their incremental gains, so that they trust that we're making the right progress, and they gives them confidence.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest, aspects that I'm hearing from you is you're taking this data and really creating, teaching and learning moments between the coach and the athlete for them to visually look at it and really develop it as racers.
Right. Well, I think one of the things about a lot is that this equipment in no way replaces coaching. Like, and if anybody thinks that they're going to go and they're going to adopt technology, pick up some piece of technology, and it's going to allow them to have to coach less, they're so wrong. And that's not the point. Like, the point is trying to figure out how to be a better coach. And that's what you use these things for. And I think also understanding that you are the coach. And so you have to understand your athletes and understand how they learn. I will tell you, I've got a couple of kids, they never see a heart rate band. We put heart rate band on them one day, and the kid just started to freak out. Like, you can just see it in his face. It's just like, okay, well, what does the thing say? What am I doing? Like, how do I okay, you know what? I think that band is broken, and we took it away, and because it wasn't helping him, it wasn't good for him. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the things. And the same thing with the athletes. It's an individual piece for us, and very rarely would our team see boat data when we're using something like the Peach. So when we're looking at somebody's output, some of the stroke dynamics. So if we're looking at the curve, we're looking at their power output, we're looking at their length and their connection and their slip. Very rarely will they ever see that where somebody else's data is also present, because it's not about the other people in the boat for them. And one of the things that we felt was important, we wanted it to be, for use a cheesy term, we wanted it to be a safe space. We didn't want there to be this sense that like people are going to judge or value me in a bad way. Like, we're looking for opportunities for improvement. And we're also identifying where kids are they're doing something really well, and we can identify that, and we can help them understand that in a better way. So one of the things that we don't do, and I know there are certain groups out there, some of the national teams where they'll have like a group data session. they'll sit down with the whole boat. Some of the national teams will, and they'll on a big display the boat's data, and you can see every single individual, and they'll sit there and they'll critique each person in front of everybody. I don't do that. And I think for me, I don't I think they're getting that enough. I mean, we do a lot of side-by-side even boat rowing, and you can gain a pretty good feel for your performance, right? Yeah. and so then I think when they come back and they say, oh, you know what? Now I'm looking at my Peach data and I remember that workout and I remember that boat when it was moving really well. And now I see that piece and wow, that's what it looks like. That's how I want to row. That's what I want to improve on. I feel like that's more valuable for our environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One question I had for you is having gone from being an athlete to a coach now, and then seeing all this integration of all this technology. Were there things that, when you were a student athlete that coaches did to measure these types of things? It'd be interesting to hear how that's it's changing. We're becoming much more informed with all of this technology.
Yeah, no, and I think, I think the short answer, to this level, no. I was fortunate enough, I did row here. One of the great things about Princeton is, we've got this incredible body of water to roll on that, so we've got 5K. It's fully marked out every 500 meters. There's no flow. There's no traffic issues. So you're always getting really effective and efficient training. And, when I first started coaching in the late 90s, it was pretty common practice that I would just run down the lake and I was taking 500 meter splits through any workout. If we were doing steady state, I was taking it. And quite often I would train my crews on those numbers. I had markers for 18 and 20 and 22, and they knew those. And I would just call out the numbers. We upgraded the course. We got 250 meter buoys, and I would just call out the split. And they knew that number. They knew if they heard 48 seconds, what that meant. And we would just so we were doing it in a way, and I think rowers, that's something the impeller on the boat with the old style speed coach. I was a geek. I had one of those things as soon as I could get one on my single, and would spend a lot of time thinking about my split and rowing on that number, how I change speed. And I think one of the things that this allows for me to do that's different is that this stuff's running in the background. Right. And so one of the things that I think we have to be careful of is overloading people with information. At its core, rowing is a sport, and we're rowing in a liquid medium, right? It's such a complex and fluid sport, and more data right in front of you isn't necessarily a good thing. It's not going to be the solution. Being able to come back afterwards and take a look at it and try to digest it, I think that to me is the change with this. So, back in the day, we would sit there and we would be listening to the coxswain call out the splits, right? That's what you would listen to the whole time. Or then you got the Speed Coach XL and you're looking at the split in your launch. Right, as they're rowing. But once the workout was done, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't remember any of that. Right. Was done. Right now, I can actually coach way more. I can watch my crew. I can watch the guys. I can focus on the guys, because I know that at the end of the day, when I take the mini max off, I can walk up, slap that thing in the port, and I can go get that data and I can think about it. And I think that has been a really nice change. But I think technology, it's interesting. I've talked with a lot of coaches here about it. And I'm a part of we've started a high performance initiative in our athletic department to talk about this more as a department and get a good conversation going and to collaborate between the coaches on these kinds of things. And my big role in it is the tech side. And so I talk a lot with the other coaches about how I use this stuff and how it may or may not be beneficial to them. And it was really interesting to talk with the track and field coaches here are legendary. I mean, the women's coach just retired this past spring, but he'd had a 32-year career and just remarkable results. And I asked him one day, I was like, so, I mean, do you guys ever use, like, do your athletes use a GPS watch with heart rate? No. Why would we do that? I'm like, well, you guys probably try to run certain paces, and but they know how fast they're going. They know it. And I said, well, what about heart rate? He's like, well, I do a hard day, an easy day, and a middle day. And I was like, well, how do you define hard? 175 beats a minute for everyone? Is there a difference? That's like he never thought of it that way. Like, and I would always think of it as, okay, well, 175 for one person is very different than it is for another person.
Sure.
But for him, that didn't matter. And his athletes were really successful, right? And so I think getting those conversations going where you have great coaches, and that's the one special thing about Princeton is I think, there's 38 varsity sports. There's some legendary coaches here in the swimming programs and track and field, in lacrosse, and being able to get all of these people to talk more, and I can learn from all of them. And when we talk about technology, what I often come back on is that technology, we all use it. You can be like sort of the old timer curmudgeon and say, oh, I don't need that stuff. At the end of the day, the track coach, he still wants those new shoes. That's technology. Right. Like a different hockey stick, that's technology. A bat is technology. And so that's what, when these coaches start to say, this is too much technology, I'm like, you're using it every day. Your kids try technology all the time. It's just, it might not be giving you, a data readout. That's not the point. What you're doing is you're trying to use something to gain an advantage. And it's whatever it is, like, and you think back the stuff that people used to use, put a straw on the stern of the boat, right, to watch for check. Awesome piece of technology that is as useful as a GPS, right? Yep. And so I think like those sorts of conversations, I think they're great. Have they existed here? Absolutely.
Outstanding, man. That's really, really cool. And that's even more exciting to hear about that kind of initiative that you guys are taking at Princeton, having those internal discussions about high performance and the technology piece. So that's really cool.
Yeah. No, and a big part of that initiative, it stemmed out of the fact that, even so within athletics, there's lots of great people, but outside of athletics as well. I mean, the engineering department here has a lot of brilliant people. In the psychology department. I mean, I just finished the Undoing project, and it turns out one of those guys is a professor here. So I wrote to him, and we started talking about mindset and how to understand risk. And I mean, he's one of the best in the field. And so that's this, I think some of those things, we just forget that this exists. And so trying to bring the community together when we think about performance and high performance, and it's not about trying to gain wins and losses, right? It's more understanding our sport and learning, and at the end of the day, learning how to be better competitors.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Lifelong students.
Yeah, it's cool.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit. And another topic we had down, and this is a particular challenge for any collegiate coach, regardless of the sport, is kind of working within the structure of the NCAA with the changing in the off-season and in-season hours, and building really good foundation of fitness for the team and getting them ready to compete. So I guess before we kind of get into the specifics, like it'd be probably helpful to provide a little bit of context for those that aren't aware of the collegiate, U.S. system, like how that works and, the change in hours so they understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. The way that it works for us, we have a slightly shorter academic year than some schools, so they might have to adjust it slightly differently. But for us, we basically think about it as two seasons and an off season. The 2 seasons being the fall and the spring, and the winter period, what we would call winter training now, is our off season. And the NCAA will limit you to 20 hours a week when you're in season, so the fall and the spring, and for us in the Ivy, 6 hours in the off season. And so, a big part of that is trying to figure out how to be effective and efficient with your time. The one thing that I will tell you, and people often think that I'm not being honest when I say this, but while we're allowed 20 hours here at Princeton when we're in season, I typically use 13 to 14. What I've found is that based on the academic workload for my athletes, that's a sweet spot. 14 hours a week is a number that I know is going to be, we can work hard. We can make gains technically. We can make gains physiologically, and academically, they can also make gains. We've got a fair number of engineers on the team, as an example, and a lot of those kids are taking lab courses. They've got a lot of problem sets, and I try to, and we're also fortunate here that we have a time block every day from 4:30 to 7:30 when nothing academic can be scheduled. So I know every one of my athletes is free from 4:30 in the afternoon to 7:30 in the afternoon. We've got our own lake. It's well protected, so the conditions are good. I know that I can take them and train them. And I try to limit my mornings so that for their workload, I'm not asking them, hey, if they've got to do a group project and the time when they can get everyone together is from 10 to midnight, that I'm not then pulling them down every single morning at 6 or 6:30 or 7, because recovery is really important too.
For sure.
And the way that I talk about it with my team is I tell them that, look, I think that you are actually doing double workouts every day. It's just that your second session is up in the classroom. And so there is a workload there. There's fatigue there. There's stress there. And we have to place a value on that and understand that there's a cost to doing that kind of work. And they're not just resting and recovering when they're sitting in the classroom or sitting in the lab or cranking out a problem set. And so we talk a lot about that. In the off season for us, when we go indoors, I think that's one of the great things about rowing is, look, the rowing ergometer is one of the best pieces of technology ever invented, right? You can be so efficient on that machine. After an hour, most guys are cooked, right? And so it's not like we need to go and do 2.5-hour sessions on the erg to make gains. And so we talk a lot about quality, like the quality of the work that we do. And it's not, the goal isn't to see, can we add more? It's being better with the time that we're using. And you're improving your consistency through a week. That if you have a good hard session on a Wednesday, you don't have to sacrifice and be average on Thursday to rebound from that. And so that's one of the things that we'll spend a lot of time talking about. And, there's also the sort of emotional part of the winter. It gets dark and it's gloomy, and you got to use that in the right way, right? You have to learn how to motivate a team through the dark parts. And I think volume isn't necessarily the answer for that. So that's what we'll work a lot on in the winter time. Springtime, everybody's pretty on point. But again, I would say 13 hours, maybe 14. And that gets a little bit tricky when we start to race. And last year we were traveling a lot, as an example. We're on the road for a month straight. So, we were basically rowing on Carnegie Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a short session on Thursday. We'd load the trailer, travel Friday, race Saturday morning, and come home. Right. And so it's like you're not. I think it's difficult to get 20 hours a week of training when that's what your schedule's like. So, it's sort of the breakdown.
No, that's great. I mean, there's a couple things that I'd like to comment on. Like, I love the point you made about talking about, that they're doing 2 sessions because the second one is when they're going to class. And I've made a similar point in other interviews that I've done, is that, there's 3 types of stress. You have mental, physical, and like hormonal, right? And the body doesn't necessarily distinguish. It's stress is stress. And so, to your point, like taking into account of not just the actual training stress that they're doing when they come to practice, but the, mental stress from tests or projects or, group meetings or relationships or, that balance of all those different things. I mean, that's huge. And that kind of, I think, really does make the collegiate environment pretty unique because, it's very different from high school and it's different from a national team level because, they're a little bit older, they're a little bit more mature. They are, independent and they have to be responsible for getting themselves to and from class and to and from practice. So it's a lot to balance across that equation, quote unquote.
Right. No, and it's something that we talk about a lot, and we've actually been discussing it a fair amount in our high performance committee groups here. That a place like Princeton, it's an intense environment, and academically, one of the things that we've noticed is that I think we're starting to look at our athletes on the whole a lot more. And I would encourage professors and deans to also do the same, because I think one of the things that's technology, as we talk about it again, like one of the things that these phones have done and email has done is it's made people much more reachable. And I think that too often, people will get caught into their little sphere and what they're working on. And so I think for a coach, the mistake you could make is like, well, I looked at his schedule because now I can have him post that for me online, and he's free from 2:30 to 3:30. I'm going to have a meeting with him. He needs free time like that. And I think that we think that we can slot that. And I think that what we're seeing on the academic side a little bit is this is happening a lot. Kids are getting called into more meetings. They're being expected to do classwork out of class a lot more. A midterm exam is now becoming a take-home midterm exam. These exams that used to be an hour, they're saying, hey, we're going to make this easy on you. We're going to make it a take-home. It's 8 hours long now. And so I think trying to understand this for our athletes so that we're better about it. And how do we also help people here understand that this is actually what's happening to these kids? This is what we're doing to these kids. And can we be a little bit more thoughtful of them as a whole? Because ultimately the goal is that they're going to thrive here. That's the whole purpose of a place like this. And if we create more stressors, how do they thrive? So I think that's a big part. And I think you hit it on the head. Like those, and the stressors that you're talking about, they're all going to have them and they're going to change. Relationship issues come and go. When they come, like that's a stressor. and especially for the first time a kid's going through it. And how do you create an environment that's going to help that guy through it and also learn how to be better with it the next time?
For sure. No, that's great. And that's really cool that Princeton has that type of environment where you are not just looking at the, solely the with the horse blinders on in terms of just the athlete, but like looking at like, okay, what are they doing at school? What's their entire schedule like? How can we help them be better overall? Right.
Right.
In the end, that's going to translate to everything you're talking about, like better team environment, better speed on the water, better results, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we touched on everything that we had.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we move into the rapid fire questions?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay, cool. All right. So first question. So Greg, given all of your knowledge and experience that you've accumulated at this point in your life, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago?
Lighten up. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think like perspective was something that I probably could have used when I was still competing at 20 and 22, and understanding the value of my whole team, like how important it really was to my performance, that it wasn't purely me. And the fact that the people that I was working with were a major part of why I loved doing it. I look back on that and I see that now and wish I would have taken more advantage of it then.
That's outstanding advice. What's your favorite strength training exercise?
Pull-ups.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mostly because it's the one thing I can do some of. If I ever do any bench press, it's actually disgusting to watch. You wouldn't want to see it. So
yeah, but see that to me that makes sense because think about it. So we're talking about, rowers, right? So we're really good at the pulling motion, right? So that's a type of pull, the pull up. The antithesis, like a push, that push up or bench press, like that's very difficult. We really have to like work at that.
Yeah.
What's your favorite training session to do in terms of either for yourself or like with your athletes in terms of something to program?
For me personally, I love long, hard sessions. So anything that is 40 minutes to an hour long and is as full throttle as I can keep it is the most satisfying kind of work I can do. I don't row anymore. I bike. And I still to this day try to do that at least twice a week, mostly because I think it exhausts me enough that I feel like I have been successful. Nice. With my team, it's interesting. I love competitive side-by-side stuff. Just today we were out doing 5-minute pieces in even boats side by side. I love that with my team. I think it really and it can be 5-minute pieces. It can be stuff by 4s. It can be stuff by 6s. It can be long pieces. Sometimes we'll even do it. We'll do the full lake with that. There's something about that, the thrill of that. And I think the sense of accomplishment you get when you see your entire group putting out that effort. And I just love it. And I think that's what the sport's about at the end of the day. It's not about sitting there by yourself, rowing by yourself and trying to find this, special, happy place. I think it's being in that environment of, side by side.
I love it, man. I'm getting goosebumps right now listening to you. How has your training changed compared to 10 years ago? And that could be like personally or like philosophically.
Yeah. So for me personally, my own training has changed a lot in I have actually increased what I do and lowered the intensity of what I do. I think that's part of just my age. And I've actually started to look for things like the longest things I can possibly achieve. Like, what can I survive? Like, finding different kinds of limits, and so a lot of it forever for me was what intensity can I survive? And now I have started to look at things that are so long that I have to learn how to fuel myself and stay hydrated, stay healthy through it, and mentally keep it. Yeah, and that stuff has been like, I feel like that's the limit now where I like to really sort of push myself, and I enjoy it. When I don't get to do it very often, but when I get to go and have a 6 hour or 8 hour day, I think that's pretty incredible. Nice. Philosophically for me, I have really felt like the aspect of fun of it, not like, okay, it's casual and jokey, but the enjoyment, enjoying the effort has become really, really important to me, and what I want to make sure I bring to the guys, and including in, some of the worst stuff. Well, one of the lines that we use a lot is embrace the suck. Like that, there's definitely those moments, but like, tomorrow it's going to be blowing, a direct north wind at about 15 miles an hour, which will make a nice, meaty, choppy lake out there. We will go out and we'll do something in it and make a big part of our goal now when we go and do that is like to really go and embrace that. And guys get into it now. And we used to try to micromanage that and maybe even try to hide from it a little bit, and nitpick the effort. And now it's just about, hey, let's go do it. And I think that change in mindset has really created an approach that go for it, stick your neck out. And that truly is what it's about. Like that's the reward in the sport. It's not so much about just the win and loss column. And yeah, we're competitive. We want to go for the win, but it's the act of going for it that's the thing. It's not the win. And I think that we have brought that into the program a lot more in the last 5 or 6 years.
Awesome. Have you ever had an injury? And if so, how did that affect your training?
I have actually been looking for some wood right now. I've been exceptionally fortunate in my athletic career, and it's funny. People ask me that, what do you think it was that allowed you, as a rower through my my collegiate career and my national team career, allowed me to somehow not get sidelined with something. And I always summed it up to actually not being strong enough to physically hurt myself, that I didn't have enough horsepower to crack a rib or hurt a disc.
Well, that's good. I mean, you've never had any injuries, so that's always a plus thing, right?
Yeah. No, it's been good. I mean, I've had nagging stuff, sure, but I haven't had a major physical setback.
Right on. Very cool. What's one thing that junior or high school athletes should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
I think they need to put their phones down. Yes. I totally mean it. It's just like, somebody threw this statistic out in one of our staff meetings the other day that the average teen and 20s person is spending on average 2 hours a day on social media. And that is horrific. There's so much in the world. Like, go do it. Go out and enjoy it. Get outside. And if you can't not put it down, then turn it off. Like, I think people need to disconnect from that stuff a little bit more. And I think that, especially for younger kids, just to, like, when you're in high school, like, engage and interact, talk to people, learn that's true communication.
Not text.
A text is not communication.
Love it. What's your best tip to improve recovery post training session?
Sleep, without a doubt.
Excellent. All right. Last three are really fun ones, nothing training related. So, what's your favorite meal?
I love grilling. And lately I've been into making these 4.5 inch thick tomahawk steaks. Delicious.
Dude, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's good.
God.
It's good. But actually, just last weekend, I was hanging out with Luke McGee, and he has recently picked up on making sourdough, and he gave us a starter. And so last weekend we made our first 2 loaves of bread, and so that might be our new thing. So nice. We'll see.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's one book everyone should read?
The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac.
Nice. Final question. Who have you studied or do you continue to study in your career to improve and get better?
There's nobody in particular. The one place I've been looking a lot lately is in cycling, mostly because I like riding the bike. I also think that the one thing I've found is that if there's anybody that's had to sort of face developing a good mindset and an ability to endure pain, it's cyclists. And so I feel like, in such a competitive realm that you have to really hone those skills. And so I've just had a lot of fun reading about, from each of these guys, how they approach it.
Very cool. Well, Greg, this takes us through the end of the interview. This has been a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Oh, you bet. It's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, just hang on the line. Let me give you a proper goodbye offline.
Yeah, you bet.
I hope you enjoyed this brand new content. Please take a moment and share it on your favorite social media network to help the show continue to grow and reach new audiences. And be sure to tune in next week when I have another brand new episode when I sit down with coach and trainer Kelly Manzoni and we discuss unconventional training and gear voice sport.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.